All right, guys, welcome back to another Friday altcoin watch list from your boy Mercury. So today we're gonna do a quick review of the top 5 coins that I chose from last week. We're gonna go through those really quick. Saw how you could have looked to trade them and manage trades throughout, uptrending or downtrending price action, deviations, scam wicks, whatever. And then we're gonna discuss top 5 for next week, and then I'll give you my whole game plan for those as well. So starting off, we have Link. If you recall, I sent out, not sent out, but showed, right? This isn't a paid group. I showed a trade setup for Link that looked something along the lines like this, where, you would look to trade these hourly 200 moving averages, swing trade that up into mid range, maybe even range highs. And that sets the stage for a really awesome kind of trade setup. So I actually did end up taking this trade in that video, last Friday's video. I mentioned that I'm not even sure if I want to trade something like this because it's quite difficult to kind of just attribute the hourly 200 moving averages to something like Link. So I actually end up taking that trade. And then I forgot what it was that day, but it was some sort of news event. Maybe it was Jerome Powell speaking. No, that was before. I can't remember exactly what it was. Something shook me out of that trade. And I actually ended up taking a very similar kind of trade where I looked to buy the reclaim the 15-minute 200 moving averages because that was the local trend that we talked about on Friday, and kind of just assumed that I did in fact buy the bottom in hindsight, and I kind of cut a little bit too early. I should have just let it play out, but all was fine. It was all fine and dandy because we reclaimed the 15-minute 200s, and ever since then we've just continued to uptrend. So the trade setup that I'm currently in looks a little bit something like this. I'm looking to kind of manage the trade along 15-minute 200s. I'm looking to enter trades along the hourly 200s. And at this point, we have hourly 200s along with mid range confluence. So lots of kind of actionability there in terms of levels to work with. So Link was a really good find from last week. Next, we have B&B was on my list last week. Not so well, or really not the same exact kind of thing, right? Drastically underperformed the market. So obviously, something like this, you would have attributed maybe 30-minute 200s or 15-minute 200s, right? Something along those lines. But regardless, you'd be able to see, oh, wow, that looks like a downtrend. You can portray that idea in many different ways, shapes, and forms. That's a break in your structure. That's a lower high. That's a loss of a trend and beginning of a new trend. 30-minute 200s as resistance, and ever since then we've just continued to downtrend. So BNB not so great of a setup, but remember that was a continuation from the week prior, which would have been that rally. So still a massive winner in my books. XMR did actually go on to perform pretty well. So pretty much just a grind upwards. Now I mentioned I wouldn't be really looking to trade XMR either, mostly because the price action itself is not really anything that is too appealing to me. But I did call out the 30-minute 200s, so something like that, right? Loss of the trend makes you think, okay, that's the breakdown, similar to Link, right? Similar, exactly what happened for Link. And then just like what happened for Link, when you reclaim that price action, and again, this is why I'm not really trading XMR, when you reclaim that price action, retest it, right? So now you're uptrending again. There's no real bullish argument. In hindsight, this is a fluke. This is a deviation. It's a fake out. It's a bear trap. It's whatever the hell you want to call it, but it's that, right? And then price continues to head to the top right corner as we initially thought it would. So you look to re-enter along, something like 30-minute 200s with the assumption that that probably is your local low, and then swing trade that up into probably targeting that next resistance level, next major resistance, and you're about halfway there. So good on you so far. Strong outperformer because this is up around 7 or 8% since we called it out, and Bitcoin is up like 3 or 4, right? So next we have XRP. I actually did not look at this, so I'm not really sure how this did. XRP not so great. Currently just forming a consolidation structure. Not too much to talk about here. I don't see any way to spin this around to make it seem like you would have profited in any way, shape, or form. We called out 15-minute 200 moving averages last Friday. And then they didn't shape up the way that we thought they would. We thought they would be confluent with this region by the time we tested them. It was actually, in fact, that we had lost that region. So maybe you would have looked to kind of swing trade this, after the reclaim with the assumption that that's the low, and you would have been stopped out, right? There's no way for me to spin that around and make it look pretty. You just would have been stopped out. And at this point, I don't use trend lines, but I can use them to portray an idea to you guys, right? We're basically just consolidating. So I can see that without the trend lines. I'm just looking at the structure, the price action itself. If you need the trend lines, that's cool. But the idea is now we're just consolidating. So definitely not a strong outperformer, or uptrend, or anything along those lines. So probably not worthy of being on the watch list today, right? Heading into next week. So XRP was a loss. We have Tron. This is all still from last Friday. Tron did continue to outperform. Something along the lines of 15-minute 200s did continue to act as the trend, along with this previous range high retest, which was also called out, right? Very ideal kind of retest. Now, more ideal would have been, if these 15-minute 200s lined up along with that retest. But obviously, beggars can't be choosers. So, retesting this zone and then after reclaiming the 15-minute 200s kind of confirms, and I hate that word in trading, but it confirms the idea of, yeah, you know what? That probably was the sort of buy zone. That probably was where you wanted to bid. Yeah, you probably should look to trade this up. Right. And ever since then, pretty solid continuation. Nothing too crazy to cry home to mom about, but definitely tradable, definitely manageable. And then last thing was Litecoin, which has so far not really done anything too significant at the moment. It's kind of just up, or I'm sorry, not uptrending. It is consolidating, right? It's forming this like range kind of thing for the most part, right? I'm not trying to be a genius. I just want to give myself, general regions to kind of work with so I can scale my assumptions in either direction, which is basically just to say if Litecoin does this, right, and breaks out above this range, then it will be a strong outperformer once again. Why is that the case? Well, because when you look at the highest time frame, right? I'm looking at the 4 hour, but I'm using that to kind of, give myself an idea of what is actionable on these high time frames. That's a 5 month long range. If you know anything about ranges, you probably don't want to fade the expansion of them. So that also means probably don't be bullish on Bitcoin at the moment. And yeah, so far so good. 30 or 40% expansion on Litecoin ever since breaking out above the range. So you would kind of just anticipate further expansion, right? But probably not when low time frames are just going sideways. That's not going to help you any at all, really. So once those low time frames start to develop a trend once again, if that trend happens to be an uptrend, then that now means that every time frame across pretty much, every time frame you can look at, every trend is uptrending. So you probably just want to look for continuation at that point. So Litecoin is actually on the list for this week because of that reason alone. It's not necessarily a strong uptrender, but in the event that certain things happen, everything I just mentioned, it will be. So you probably want to keep an eye on Litecoin still moving forward. And truthfully, even if this range breaks down, we start to downtrend on a higher time frame, right? That's a low, that's a lower high, that's a lower low. It would still be an optimal kind of entry somewhere around $65, where we have 4 hour 200s as well as the previous range highs for about 5 months in a row. So still a nice little swing trade. So either way that Litecoin breaks, there is an actionable long setup that you can look to play into. So Litecoin is the first one for our watch list on today's list. Um, Tron is actually another one. Kind of just look to continue on Tron. It's like an honorable mention is the way that I'm thinking about it. Last week, Link was an honorable mention, and it actually did the best out of all the coins, I think. So Tron is another one. Link is again on this week's watch list, just simply because we're looking for that continuation. So that's three coins right there: Litecoin, Tron, Link, and all three of those were mentioned last week as well. Next, we have FTM. So this is something you can look to play. Now, FTM specifically, kind of looking for a setup along these lines where I'm looking for like hourly 200 moving averages because they've been locally relevant, right? I can look to play into those along with some pretty significant high time frame demand as confluence to that idea. So that gives you a pretty decently probable 4.2 hour trade or whatever, 420. But that's kind of what I'm looking to play into. Uh, This is more iffy because it's, again, one of those things where I'm not willing to set bids for it ahead of time. So this is just a rough draft of a setup. Really what you want to do, in my opinion, is assess whatever the local time frame trend is, and by local I mean even more local than those hourly 200s that beautifully respected, were respected over here and then prior to that and whatever. Right, what is FTM currently respecting? So it's not even the 15-minute 200s. You have to dig deeper than that. It's something like the 5-minute 200s. So when you are trading FTM, the only way that you're going to be able to actionably trade this and benefit from it is if you are the person who grabs their cup of coffee at 8 a.m., sits there, watches the screen for, you know, however long, 5 p.m., and is just strictly watching 5-minute 200s FTM, right? 5-minute chart. I'm not that person, so I can't really do that, even though you probably could, and I probably could get away with it. It's not something that I'm even willing to do. So I need this trend to break down as it is to test the region that I'm interested in. And because of the style of price action getting up into this point in the first place, right? For whatever reason, everybody loves to, hang on my man Andre's, balls or whatever. For whatever reason, people love Andre, so that style of price action is pretty parabolic. There's no structure here, right? I'm not going to sit here and discuss a 5-minute demand zone or anything like that. So, how do I know that this zone is relevant? Is there volume to kind of support price action itself if we come back down into it? I don't know. Your guess is really as good as mine. So, for me personally, this is not something kind of like DYDX that week prior or 2 weeks prior, SFP 2 weeks prior, right? Not really interested in bidding on the way down and catching the knife. But let's say that we have, the world is just butterflies and dandelions and gives us everything that we could ever possibly want as beautifully as we want it. We do something along those lines after having tested the hourly 200s and I'm able to catch that kind of a setup, then yeah, that's something I can play into, right? And now my invalidation is just that much more solid because now we're showing strength again on this time frame and after having already tested a higher time frame. So that means that this is probably my invalidation at that point, giving me higher RR, and I can look to enter here and swing trade that up into my next high time frame resistance. So that would be a more optimal kind of setup. You're going to find that thinking in this sort of manner is going to give you higher probability trades. Oftentimes, it also means that because everything is a balancing act between probabilities and risk reward, it also means that you're probably going to have a little bit lower RR, right? So, this trade, it's on the right that you can't really see, it's 4.2R trade. This trade is about a 4R trade. Now, granted, it's a rough draft, but I would imagine you're still able to get around 3 or 4R. So you're really not sacrificing that much in terms of reward. And you're giving yourself an edge in terms of probabilities because you're able to kind of see the price action playing out. There's an opportunity cost that comes with this setup. There's not an opportunity cost that comes with this one, right? So that's kind of something you have to think about. I could sit here and explain the concept of opportunity cost. I have some threads on it, but maybe I'll make a video on it sometime in the near future. But yeah, this is how I'm looking to play FTM. Doge is another good one. So really, we're still in the realm of you have to be wary of liquidity, and Doge definitely fits into that category where you have to be very, very aware of the liquidity on Doge, right? Um, just simply looking at these wicks alone, you can kind of tell like it's very odd, kind of weird, choppy price action. Not necessarily choppy. There's a clear trend forming here, but mostly for Doge, kind of just interested in trading the local trend, 30-minute 200s. So at the moment, we're using something like hourly 200s as support. Again, because this is so weird and we're having troubles with liquidity and whatnot, I can't really opt to buy the hourly 200s. I can't justify it enough, right? It's not as great of an entry as I would like it to be. If the hourly 200s were right here, right, and then I would be missing out on all this price action on the way up to testing the 30-minute 200s and potentially reclaiming them. But because they're kind of jumbled in the same region, I don't pay much of an opportunity cost if I just kind of, decide to sit this one out and wait for price action that kind of looks like that and a reclaim of the 30-minute 200s so that I can scale my assumptions to say oh yeah, that probably was the higher low in the 4 hour, right? And from there, I can look for that higher high, right? So I can look to enter here. This is my invalidation, market structure low, right? Reclaim of the trend. You have a low time frame supply zone that you would also be reclaiming, right? You can justify it in just so many different ways. So that means you're probably giving yourself an edge in terms of probabilities, right? Now, that also means you're sacrificing some risk reward. So usually, right? Sometimes you'll even find that you have higher probabilities and higher risk reward, and all you have to really keep in mind is the opportunity cost. What if we trigger the setup, but you're asleep, right? Something like that. So that's going to be the way I look to trade Doge. If we lose those hourly 200s, then I'm going to consider myself a genius for not really looking to trade them. But when it's all said and done, Doge is still drastically outperforming the rest of the market in terms of local price action. So probably something that is worthy of my attention more so than something like Bitcoin or even ETH, really. Um, last, or no, not last. Sorry, second to last. Mana. Now this, looking to trade this. What was it? 30-minute 200s. Yeah, 30-minute 200s, pretty decent trend portrayal, and also it would just simply be a pullback retest, right? The optimal sort of ideal. The world is butterflies and dandelions and whatnot. Pullback retest into 30-minute 200s, along with previous range highs as of the past week or so, and just simply look for expansion thereafter. So you can look to play that. It's probably something I'm gonna watch, keep an eye on. If I can catch a quick scalp and just quickly de-risk my exposure on a wick or whatever. But definitely something that I'm going to be paying attention to, just because it's showing some very very local relative strength. Granted, you have to keep the context in mind and understand that this is obviously a very 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 drastically skewed bearish chart. So if the price action breaks through that zone, right, and says fuck you and your 30-minute 200s and just keeps downtrending, well, what did you really expect, right? So that maybe gives you a little bit of insight in terms of how I'm looking to position in terms of conviction, likely attributed to context, right? So last is QNT, which for similar reasons is holding my interest. Something along the lines of you could use 30-minute 200s. Let's see, what was it that I'm basing this off of? It's 15-minute 200s. The 15-minute 200s local trend portrayal, pretty solid on the way up, pretty solid on the way down prior to that, solid on the way up prior to that, solid on the way down prior to that, right? So even within a range where we typically would not attribute trend trading systems, the trend has still been decently respected. So now that we have established a trend in the form of breaking out above that range, I'm allowed to anticipate a trend to actually form along these 15-minute 200s. So just simply same exact kind of context of mana, looking to trade the structure, higher highs, higher lows, looking to trade the trend portrayal, 15-minute 200s, I think portray most accurately. That's the best that I could find, along with a horizontal demand zone as confluence. Now, that seems like a really good setup to me. So if we end up deviating, then sure, that's what my stop loss is for. In that case, mana would probably also be getting stopped out. And at that point, you're allowed to just simply anticipate back into mid range, back into range lows, right? So the range would just simply continue ranging, similar to how this is a deviation on the bottom side. And thereafter, you would anticipate, okay, here we are deviating back inside of the range. So that's a test of our range lows. Here's mid range, here's range highs, mid range, range lows, mid range, range highs. Oh, look, we're breaking out above the range, right? So pretty simple stuff. This week, feeling a lot more comfortable with where we're at as opposed to last week. And truthfully, in hindsight, last week didn't even do too bad. So we called out Tron, we called out Monero. Litecoin didn't really do anything. Link did great. BNB was a fluke. XRP was a fluke, but overall pretty good, pretty solid. We continue to do a pretty good job of putting ourselves ahead of the rest of the market, just by kind of whittling out a lot of the bullshit and not really paying attention to anything that isn't worthy of our attention. And the way that I do that is that 4-second rule. So I'll leave a little link up here in the top right corner or whatever. and you can do that by yourself, more frequently rather than wait for me to hold your hand every Friday. But regardless, if you have enjoyed my hand holding, if you've seen any sort of benefit from me in any way, shape, or form, you want to go above and beyond to support me, the best way to do that is to sign up through my Bybit referral link and trade on that moving forward. I really do appreciate it. I am partnered with Bybit. So yeah, it really does help me a lot. If you want to, help me afford some avocado toast during the bear market, then definitely smash that like button. Right? No, please don't. Uh, like the video, comment, subscribe, share with your grandmother, all that fun stuff, and use my Bybit referral link because it's hard out here for your boy. It's a bear market, right? So, yeah, I appreciate you guys. I hope you got some value. Much love, and take it easy.